but it's called Release the Mosquitoes, How 5 Billion Bugs Will Help Fight Dengue Fever in Brazil.
Yeah.
And it reads, this may sound like a premise for a horror movie or a biblical plague, but the World Mosquito Program plans to release 5 billion mosquitoes into Brazil, and the hope is that they will save lives. The billions of bugs will be released with a bacteria called
Wolbachia.
Are you AI? What the fuck?
Like, I know what's going on in my field a little bit.
All right. You're smarter than I thought. I thought it would be a fun place to start. And by the way, we're recording this from Panama City. I have been living in Panama with my girlfriend for the past two and a half months now. And it's been absolutely wonderful. And speaking of Hungary, we had an experience at the Bayano caves that I thought would be fun to start off with before we get into the science stuff. And, you know, there's an overlap with it, too. So maybe we'll get into some scientific analysis. But I thought we could walk through that experience now, having a few weeks to look back on it and sort of tell the story of how we both experienced that moment differently. And then after the fact, we ended up, I think, feeling on a very similar plane emotionally about what we just went through, but we definitely had two different reactions while it was going on. So I'll start off the story, but so down in Panama, we made a trip to a place called the Bayano Caves. And this place is part of a weekend experience most of the time. So people will go there. You stay in a sort of hut, like a little luxury hut on an island. And one of the tours that they give on this isolated island or nearby the isolated island is that you go through a cave, which sounds wonderful, which sounds something that we've both done before. And I'm going into it, I'm thinking like, oh my God, this is great. Let's do this. And the thing that they told us beforehand, or told you because you booked it and what it said on the website, you told me, and you can correct me if I'm forgetting anything, but you shouldn't go on this cave tour if you are afraid of the dark.
Well, so no, not quite. I booked the tour, having read essentially nothing about it, and I just know like these caves looked cool. I didn't even know we were gonna walk through water or anything. These are like informations that we looked after the fact. Okay.
So it's after the fact. And what was this information?
So essentially they're saying that you're going to be...
I'm listening. I'm just plugging in the laptop.
Essentially they're saying we're going to be walking through water. So, you know, have shoes adapted for that. And, you know, we're going into a cave. So, you know, any cave animals or insects that you could encounter in really any cave anywhere. Maybe avoid, you know, there's going to be bats, there's going to be insects. So, you know, if you're like scared of any of those, then maybe this isn't for you. But that was kind of limited to like anything you can think of you would find in really any cave in the world.
Yeah, so they did give us fair warnings, almost like a fear allergy. Like if you're scared of anything that makes you feel a certain type of way, gives you a reaction, this is what's in the cave. And after the fact, we looked that up, but going into it, we just thought normal cave tour.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, yeah, we could have maybe looked a bit more into it. I should have looked more into it. But in our defense, as we were heading there, they didn't really say anything about.
And if we did look more into it, the thing that we're going to go into was not, or things were not listed on the website as any sort of
or
warning.
Like anywhere else, because we also looked at people's comments on their experiences of the Bayano caves in other websites from other tours. And like this information was not encountered anywhere.
Who I think are bots. I think they hired people to give rave reviews of the cave to not go into the the potential disasters that can happen once you go on the tour.
Or maybe they just weren't there.
What do you mean they were like
maybe when they
emotionally like they just like you because I started dissociating when this happened, so emotionally I wasn't there, but physically I was walking through the cave.
Okay,
but let's we'll take a step back. So we arrived to the island.
Hey, people are like, what did you encounter, aliens or something?
Yeah, it's like oh my, he's about to go into like his like abuse story when he was a child. This is this happened 2.5 weeks ago, so we've had time to sort of process it a little bit. Yeah, that's what, like, if you experience intense trauma, like 2 weeks I think is enough. Like, stop crying about it. That's why we're recording. We record
You're still
things.
crying about it.
Well, I stopped crying about it right before we press record, and I'll take a break in the middle of the podcast to cry about it, but I'll say I'm just going to go to the bathroom real quick.
After we get into what those things are, we'll have to talk about you waking up in the middle of the night with nightmares about it. So
that's true. You remember my dreams and nightmares much more than I do. But
I feel like you need to tell people now what it is. People are confused.
So I'm going to lay it out. We go up to the island. We're going up to the where you stay. It's where the luxury huts are. As we're pulling up to the island, we see probably a 10 to 12 foot crocodile crawling up to a garbage can, and the driver of the boat, who lives and works on the island, did not seem fazed by this at all. So to me, I was like, is this a normal thing? There's just crocodiles crawling around the island, literally like 30 to 50 feet where we were staying back on the beach. And we asked the guy in broken Spanish, because no one really spoke. And one guy spoke English on the island, but this guy spoke Spanish. So we were like, what are these? And he was saying, they're crocodiles, but a type that you find in Panama. So
there's two types of crocodiles that you find in Panama. There's the American crocodile, which is the same that you find in America, and the caiman. And the caiman are the smaller ones, and then tend to be a lot more aggressive than the crocodiles. And so overall, American crocodile are not really famous for, especially freshwater crocodiles, are not well known for attacking humans.
Yes. So these are the ones that are not well known for attacking humans. Mm-hmm. And that's what the driver, the captain, was trying to express to us, that they're not known for it. After the fact, we looked up that there are a few incidences where attacks have happened in Panama, but the way the guy phrased it was like, they're not known for it, and he didn't say anything beyond that. So we're like, okay, they're around the island in the water, kind of on the outskirts. We're not gonna go swimming without a kayak. We're not just gonna like jump into the water, because it sounds like there's a lot here. And after that, I'm like, okay, good to know. We'll be on the cave tour. We'll be, in the kayak tour. We're not going to be swimming around and encountering these crocodiles. Like, that would be crazy to go out of our way and like induce an encounter when we know they're crawling around. And then was it that same day when we went to the cave?
Yeah.
So later that day, we embark on a boat going towards the cave with the same captain guy, and then there was one other guy who took us on the tour. Both don't speak English, so we're communicating in broken Spanglish the entire time. We get up to the cave, we start walking into the cave, and I should note that the guy in front, who's the leader, who's gonna take responsibility if someone gets lost or if anything goes wrong, he has a flashlight. That is it. No knife, no, like, just a flashlight to look around with. In a normal cave, that would be fine. Like, there's just bats, it's dark. As long as you have a light, you'll be good. Probably 30 seconds into walking into the cave, we see a crocodile to our left swimming in a little pool, just kind of like paddling a little bit. But the way I would describe it is, there are ridges in the cave, a couple feet high, and the ridges separate pools of water. So there's a main pool of water that we walked through down the middle that got chest high at certain points. And then off to the side, the ridges separate gaps of kind of like these baby pools. And in one of the first baby pools we passed on the left, there is a crocodile that was probably a similar size to the one that we saw on the island, like 8 to 10 feet. And I'm like, okay, like, I did not know this was going to be a thing. The guide isn't even telling people to, like, oh my God, there's one in the cave, where he just sees it and we start walking past it.
Yeah, because also, like, if it was, oh my God, there's one in the cave, people would freak out.
But but his reaction, and that's exactly why I'm not a tour guide. I'd be like, oh my God, and then just fucking run the other direction and leave everyone to
every man to himself.
I'd be running away. Leave me 5 stars if you survive.
Throw the children in first.
Yes. You've been great. See ya. So the crocodile and the guide sees the crocodile, and he has a reaction that lets me know that this is completely normal. There's crocodile. There's not just a crocodile, but there's probably crocodiles in this cave. And at this point, I don't say anything to you about it. You don't say anything to me. The group also spoke Spanish. Everyone besides us was speaking Spanish. They didn't try to speak English. If they knew it, they weren't really communicating in that way. And so I just kind of log that in the back of my mind. And then we get to probably like 4 or 5 minutes further into the tour. And at this point, I don't know if you saw the same things that I did, because for about like 10 to 15 minutes, I would say, at different intervals throughout the cave, I was towards the front with the guide, and then you were kind of lagging behind. There was a second group. It was like a first group with me and a couple.
Okay, I wasn't lagging behind. I was taking pictures. It wasn't like I was struggling or anything. Don't make it sound like this was like a difficult thing.
You were breathing very heavily, taking photographs.
It was a easy walk, which sometimes we had to walk through water, but like overall it wasn't anything challenging.
Sure. About 5 minutes after we saw the first crocodile in the cave, there's another pool on the right. And these ridges are only about like a foot high. So if a crocodile wanted to come over this ridge, they literally just hop in and they're in the water and they can do whatever they want to. You're in the crocodile's home.
Right.
There's another crocodile that looks a little bigger on the right in a baby pool about 5 minutes after that.
Ultimately, I lost count, but there was definitely at least 4 or 5
crocodiles. 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And I see that crocodile, and at this point, my heart rate starts to go up more than just being in a cave. And I'm thinking, holy shit. All right, at least we're ankle deep at this point. And I'm not thinking about the other stuff in the cave. Then we get to an area where the water is about 4.5 feet tall, and we're walking through. And I remember it was literally like at the level of my nipples, which is like, I'm 6 feet tall, so maybe like 8 inches to 10 inches less than that. So just about 5 feet of water. And before we go in, because I started walking ahead of our guide a little bit, because I like saw the crocodile behind us, and I wanted to like go forward a little bit. It kind of freaked me out. And the guide puts his arm out and just goes like, no, like not yet. Kind of like said something in Spanish, like a command, like stay there. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he takes his flashlight, and this is the first deep pool that we got to, and he's looking in the water, checking for crocodiles, as if that is going to help us out, because I'm looking at the same water he is, and you can only see about a foot deep with the flashlight. You can't see. This is not the beach water. This is like murky cave water.
The water was pretty clear.
But you can't see. It's not like you're looking into
but
blue
it's dark.
water.
Like exactly, like we're in a cave. It's dark.
It's not postcard water.
No, and I mean we're in a cave, so it's dark to start. But I mean,
he couldn't see past a foot down.
The thing is, they like keep telling you, they don't attack humans and stuff. But like I feel, and that's something that we've talked about, is even if they don't overall attack humans, it's like anything, even myself, if you step on me we'll see what happens. I'm probably going to react one way or another. So like, I get that they're checking. It's like, it's fine to walk alongside them as long as we don't bother them. Like, you know, like if you swim with a shark, if you don't behave weird, you're fine. The shark's not going to attack you unless it's like really desperate and stuff. So I think it's, and I mean, sharks are known to attack humans. So I think in that sense, you know, and so I was indeed further behind. And then I finally catch up to you and I'm like, a big smile on my face. I'm like, I don't know about you, but I'm having the best time. And you're like looking livid, being like, well, I don't know if you're aware of the situation here.
That was after we walked through the deep part. So first, I just want to describe my experience of walking through the deep part. So you can see the different type of personalities we have. And then listeners can wonder how we haven't broken up yet. So I'm going through... after this guy's looking with a flashlight that I'm seeing with my own eyes, and this guy doesn't have supervision. I know you can't see to the bottom. And he kind of just gives it like a casual sweep. Like if you were in your backyard and you heard a noise and you had a flashlight and you were by a fire or something and you like just casually check the bushes and you're like, oh, it's a raccoon. That's the level of urgency this guy had. He just went like click, like scan, we're good. For a pool of water that's probably like 20 feet long. He just looked at the beginning part and was like kind of flashed it ahead. He's like, all right, we're good. And it was at that point in my head, I realized, holy shit, this guy's not lighting the way for us to walk. He's checking for crocodiles in the water. Mm-hmm. And so I'm walking through a 5-foot pool of water the entire time thinking, and the next step I take could be the last step I take. Stepping on the head of a crocodile, or maybe there's like a baby that's swimming around and I accidentally kick it and the mom just like fucking snaps at my leg and drags me under. We have zero defense because we're in the home of the crocodile where it moves the fastest, where it's the deadliest, which is in water. It just drags you down, thrashes you, tries to break the bones of its prey, like snap its neck, snap its back, and you're done. Like there's nothing you can do at that point. And this guy has a flashlight. He has nothing. So every step, I'm like slowly taking steps, step by step. And we get to the other side of the pool and I like jump out. I almost like lunge out of the other side of the pool. And I think you were behind me at this point. And that's when I started to say to you, this is so fucking stupid. Like, this is the dumbest, and I'm not exaggerating. I turned to you and I was like, this is the dumbest fucking thing we've ever done. Like, this is just retarded. I'm pretty sure I said, like, this is retarded. Mm-hmm. This is so stupid. We're literally, and I said this in the cave because I'm always thinking of content. I'm always trying to, you know, monetize my experiences because I can't just be in the moment. I have to be a human that's like, oh my God, like, let's turn this into a podcast moment. And I'm like, I turn to you and I say, this is the type of thing that I would record a podcast about and laugh at this person. Like, oh my God, a person went to a cave of crocodiles that's infested with them and then got killed by a crocodile. Who would have saw that coming? That's crazy. And I'm telling you this after that deep pool. Do you now want to talk about what was going through your mind during that same experience so we can parse out the differences?
All right. Well, so we were told that they don't attack humans and they seem to be, you know, chilling, doing their own thing. And maybe there was a point in my life where I would have been like, we're walking in a river that's filled with crocs. Like, what is going on? But I was like, this is super cool. So my dad is a speleologist. I don't know if this is how you say it.
Isn't it spelunking?
Speleologist.
Okay.
Oh, well, anyway. Caveman.
Yeah.
So I grew up going through caves that were like at different levels of technique, and so I love being inside caves. I think it's so fun. So, and like you're going through water and stuff. So like from a pure cave experience, I was like, this is awesome. This is beautiful. This is super fun. And there were like all these really cool wildlife. So there were crocodiles. There were these poisonous dart frogs that were super class. And so many bats, like thousands of bats flying at the same time. Like it was like a really epic experience. I absolutely loved it. And I didn't feel like it didn't even cross my mind, like, what if a crocodile gets pissed off and then just starts attacking someone? So I was having an absolute blast. And then I catch onto you and you're like, yeah, this is retarded. Like, I've seen videos of people dying doing things like this. And I'm like, you're not wrong.
I just want to say that for context for also how much I'm freaking out. Days before this, I watched a video on Reddit of a guy gets snatched out of his kayak in the Nile by a crocodile. So I had some extra.
But Nile crocodiles are like an entire other species of crocodile.
I will concede that these were not the deadliest crocodiles on the planet, but they're still crocodiles, and we haven't even gotten to the biggest one yet. But
I have encountered Nile crocodiles, actually.
Oh, so you have? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't try to like.
Were you in a cave and the guy Tori? I told you not to worry.
And they were like those domesticated crocodiles, which was super weird and totally unethical. And they had like baby crocodiles, some of them with their mouth tied up.
You can put a crocodile in a house, but you can never domesticate a crocodile. That's like saying a domesticated bear.
Well, exactly. Like they were like crocodiles that were caught in the Nile and people just put them in their houses. And in general, it was like baby crocodiles because you can't really tackle a full adult. I mean, some people try and some don't make it.
Yeah.
But one thing that we read afterwards is that Nile crocodiles are like insane. And there is one, I think, called Gustavo. Something. Yeah, that's allegedly killed 200 people.
Yeah.
But these are not such crocodiles. These are like chill crocodiles. And I mean, I'm sure like any other animal, like don't mess with them. And also just don't mess with wildlife in general. But they were like chill. So I was having fun.
So I will say that, yes, based on what we read after the fact, that these crocodiles are less aggressive than Nile crocodiles. Mm-hmm. But if you take any animal, no matter how chill it is, and you enter its home and you even touch it, or let alone like step on its head or step on its tail, that animal will, at the very least, be super pissed off.
Yeah.
And understandably, in many circumstances, attack you.
Yeah.
And it's the
even a raccoon.
Yeah. The analogy that I made after the fact was bears are not known to attack people. That's true. It almost.
It depends.
No, but
black bears.
But 90.
True.
But the
grizzly bears, not so much.
But still, the overwhelming majority. There are thousands and thousands of bear encounters every year, and it's like single digits in the number of those encounters that end up in an attack, and even less for death. And that's you walking on a trail, you're going through the wild, and you happen to encounter a bear. Now, if you went into a bear's den and were just walking around in a bear den with, 7 to 8 bears, that is totally different than just encountering a bear in the wild or encountering a crocodile in a river. And we literally went into the home of the crocodiles and were... that to me was why I was so freaked out, because I was like, we're not just happening to encounter a crocodile, we're like in their home. We're seeking them out. We just saw like 7 in 40 minutes. Like, this is crazy.
I love that we went from like there's 4 or 5 to 7 to 8.
We saw 97 crocodiles in 3 minutes. Like, it was absolutely insane.
No, I mean, I agree. And I think a big factor as well is like we're walking through a dark cave, like where we use flashlights to even see where we're stepping. And so I think that would also be a different thing if we were walking through a den where it's like we could accidentally step on a bear's foot.
What if we were just hallucinating in the dark and there actually were no crocodiles in the cave? Like, when you close your eyes and you kind of see shapes. I was just, my fear was just projecting crocodiles onto the cave.
I have videos of the crocodiles that were like, they were flashing their flashlights at them. But like that, and that's the thing too is, I mean, they're flashing their flashlights at them, which is probably not ideal either. They probably don't love that. And I mean, I'm sure you were going to get to that point. And so the entire time I'm like, I'm trying to be like, don't worry, we're fine, and still enjoy myself. But like at the very end, there's this massive, like the biggest crocodile that we have seen so far. The king of the cave that's just chilling on a rock, minding his own business. And people just start throwing like pieces of wood at it to just get a reaction. Like, you're at a freaking zoo, which you shouldn't do. Like, don't ever bother an animal. Just leave the animal the F alone. And then the guide starts coming towards that person throwing like pieces of wood at it. And I'm thinking like I'm trying in my broken Spanish as well to be just like, what are you doing? Like, stop this. And the guide, which I think is about to stop that first guy from bothering the crocodile, kind of pushes him slightly to the side and start throwing rocks at it, being like, no, this is not how you do it. You gotta aim with bigger rocks. Yeah. And I'm just like, why are you doing this? Like, it's just like, it's fine, they don't attack humans. Like, well, first of all, they might because like, even me, if you start throwing rocks at me, I'm gonna show teeth. And also, just leave wildlife alone. That's just so disrespectful. That's just so messed up.
Yeah, that was the moment that brought us onto the same page, because after we reached the end and then came back, I was still like, this is so fucking stupid. Like, it's almost so stupid. It is hilarious how dumb this is. And then you were, I was trying to find it funny so I didn't freak out, because that's the type of brain I have. I'm like, I can't find something funny and be scared at the same time. So I try to like make fun of the shit that I'm scared of in the moment to sort of diffuse my fear. And I also was having a as good of a time as I could have in a crocodile infested cave. And so we turned back.
You were looking whiter than you are, though.
That was just the flashlight. So we turned back. We're still like, I'm still like, this is so fucking dumb. And you're just like, relax, whatever, just have fun. I'm like, all right, I'm trying to relax. It'll be fine. Hopefully the same way out, a crocodile hasn't jumped over into one of the pools we're about to walk through. And on the way out, like you said, we see the biggest crocodile we've seen the entire time. Like, I think it was at least 14 feet, maybe 16 feet, chilling on the left side of the cave on a ledge. So it wasn't even separated by a pool at this point. It was literally, we're walking out towards the entrance.
We could have touched it. Yeah.
We're maybe about like 7-8 feet away, walking through the center of the cave, and then the crocodile, like maybe like a little more from me to you, like if it was at the window.
Right.
And it's a 16-foot crocodile. And now at this point in my brain, I am thinking a little bit along the lines of, okay, these crocodiles do seem more chill. We didn't encounter one. Like, I'm starting to think this is normal, just based on the vibe of the tour, which is not. It definitely was not normal. Definitely still dangerous. But then, like you said, that other guy on the tour with us.
The thing is like Panamanian. At least it's from like Latin America. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Picked up the stick, like threw it, went to go like throw it back a little bit, and then the guy stopped him and, like you said, was like, no, do this instead. And not just rolled a rock towards a crocodile, but like bounced it off them like you would underhand a baseball at someone to catch it when you're trying. Like, if you had a 5-year-old son and he was standing 8 feet away from you and you were trying to play catch without like throwing it overhand, he did that with a like a baseball sized stone and bounced it off the crocodile, the middle of a crocodile, on a fly. And that's when I looked at you and I was like, let's get the fuck out. Like, let's just keep walking through the entrance. If this guy wants to get himself killed, that's fine. And the crocodile I saw it move a little bit, but then I just kept walking with you. And I think you were like looking back at it from the entrance of the cave to see what would happen. And then eventually the guide was like, whatever. And
I kind of wish that it snapped an arm off of that one of those guys bothering it.
Me too. I think if it snapped the arm off of the guy that it was bothering, he would have picked up his arm and threw it at the crocodile and been like, look, this is how you do it. If the crocodile snaps your arm off, you can always pick it up and throw it at the crocodile. Yeah, you could use it as like a weapon. But yeah, so that was...
It really pissed me off. It's just, not only it's incredibly stupid and dangerous, it's, even from like the chillest animal on earth, it still has like, I don't know how many teeth, but a lot of them. And also from the point that it's just like, don't fucking bother wildlife. Don't be disrespectful. Don't throw stones at wildlife to get a reaction. Like, this is not like a fucking monkey puppet or whatever. Oh, I mean, obviously don't throw rocks at monkeys either, but like, it's
no, throw rocks at monkeys.
It's not a toy. Like, it's not there for your entertainment. I just thought that was just that really pissed me off. I really enjoyed the tour to that point, and it did seem, like maybe we should be more worried about this, but if it were not, and we looked it up afterwards, like attacks from crocodiles in Panama are incredibly rare. It's almost impossible to get killed or attacked by a crocodile, like freshwater crocodiles. Still, seawater crocodiles are something else. But like in freshwater, which was where we were, they're fine. But it's just, like don't bother wildlife.
Yeah. I would have left a 5-star review on the tour if I did see that the tour guide get attacked and I was able to, like, I wouldn't want him to die, but I would want like a scare.
At least a finger or two
enough.
gone.
Yeah. At least not a full limb, but definitely parts of the whole.
Yeah.
So that you would learn a lesson, maybe be a little less cautious going on future tours. And it also made me realize that, I'm from New York, I'm from America, you're semi-Americanized, like Western Europe, lived in America.
Mm-hmm.
We have different expectations than other parts of the world when we go on tours. We go to a place and we expect that it's going to be, safety precautions, people are going to take care of stuff.
I don't know. I'm kind of used of like really limited safety precautions. Like I've been.
Well, I'll say for me then. Like if I'm going on a tour in America.
Don't put me in that basket.
When I go on a tour, like a bougie tour in New Orleans or wherever it is, there are different standards of safety. If that tour was in America with the Bayano caves, it would get shut down in 48 hours. Like someone would be like, this is fucking insane. But Panama, just in different countries around the world, like especially more developing countries, just have different standards of safety. And I'm glad we made it through that experience. And I'm also aware of, like if you see a tour that's, 4.8 in the Congo, like just be aware that they might just be driving around like an open Jeep Wrangler next to tigers and lions. Like that just, and they're not known to attack people. It has happened, but like they're not known for it. And that's like their safety. It's like informing people that the animals that we're going to drive up next to or even throw stuff at are not known to attack. So we could do whatever we want, essentially.
Yeah, I felt like it was a bit of that where it's kind of like show-offy, being like, I'm the king of the cave. Like, I'm not scared of these crocodiles. They don't attack humans. I'm fine. But regardless, even if it is, like I said, the chillest animal on earth, let's say it doesn't have teeth, that like even if it did try to attack you, you had nothing to be scared of. If it was a raccoon, just leave him the fuck alone.
So you came down to Panama to study mosquitoes, and I know you also throw rocks at the mosquitoes to get them to try to react. You have a very similar.
They can fly away, so it's very hard to do that.
Yeah, you have to have really good aim and very small rocks.
Yeah, which makes it harder.
Exactly. Can you tell the story of first of all, why you came down to Panama and what your experience with studying mosquitoes has been so far?
Yeah. So I came down to Panama to work with the Smithsonian that has a Tropical Research Institute here. And so I studied disease ecology. So that's understanding kind of like the mechanics in the environment and of like natural organisms such as mosquitoes and how that can impact disease landscape. So mosquitoes are hated by pretty much everyone, including myself. And which is interesting to be studying something you dislike. But
it provides tension though.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't feel bad
almost
when I have
like
to
a
kill
relationship. Exactly. Same thing as a relationship.
Exactly. So
you don't feel bad when you have to murder the other person.
Yeah. So mosquitoes not only are very annoying, they're also vectors of really bad diseases for humans and animals as well. They are a vector-borne species, so like they can essentially incubate viruses and create those illnesses. And so I'm studying the mosquitoes that are known to carry yellow fever, dengue, Zika, and chikungunya. which are all pretty terrible. And I've been found in these diseases have been detected in Panama. And what I'm interested in is understanding the impact of the environment on their ability to adapt to different climates and spread diseases. And in particular, in the context of climate change, we believe that those species of mosquitoes have been able to adapt to much drier climate. And so one of the predictions with climate change is longer periods of droughts. And that's something that us have observed, even though we've not been in Panama that long. The rainy season is supposed to have started, and it rained maybe twice over the past month. So it's very, very dried. And so these mosquitoes being able to survive in climates where normally they wouldn't can be not only very dangerous for humans, but also informative on how we should better develop our containment strategies so that they don't keep spreading those diseases.
So essentially, it sounds like like you said, you're working on a strategy to contain them for stopping the spread of disease. You're trying to analyze them just to understand more about their genetics, like their genetic sequencing?
Yeah.
What makes them so good at spreading disease, and how you can alter that to stop it, to maybe introduce or take away certain genes?
Right. So there's different aspects of that. but there's a genetic component. So not my work, but the postdoc that was there before me, she found loci, so an area of the gene where those mosquitoes that were found in this super dry area of Panama were different genetically from others in more expected areas of Panama where you would expect to see mosquitoes. So mosquitoes like humid, very vegetated areas. And those mosquitoes I study are the Aedes species, so Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus, otherwise known as the yellow fever mosquito and the Asian tiger mosquito. And so these are like domesticated mosquitoes. So they breed in containers. So like when people live a little bit of water, it can be as small as like a bottle cap with a little bit of water, or like swimming pool with a little bit of water left, cups and stuff. And especially if it's rained, then these keep like going. And so these are like the type of environment that they like. So if it's not rained in a really long time, the mosquitoes will struggle to survive. So these mosquitoes somehow have managed to survive, and they have something different in their genome, which makes us believe that they might be genetically adapted to much drier climate. And so if they can do that, then they can keep on adapting to harsher climates where normally we wouldn't find them. And so along the lines with climate change bringing harsher climates, those mosquitoes might persist and even get like stronger. And so we need to think about that when we try to target certain mosquitoes. Like maybe because it's a bad idea to just try to kill all the mosquitoes, because if you try to spray everything, you're probably going to kill other stuff. You're going to kill plants, you're going to kill other animals. So you need to be more precise. And so understanding that can be good.
So the mosquitoes are learning to adapt to more harsh environments that normally they wouldn't be able to survive in, because climate change is making these areas more dry, and mosquitoes are adapting to those areas and also expanding into these non-conventional climates. Yeah. I remember I think you were there for the conversation when we were speaking to our tour guide in the White Desert in Egypt, who didn't throw a rock at a crocodile or any other animals. That was a great tour. One of the 17 Mohammeds that we met when we were over there. He was saying that mosquitoes are now being found in areas of the desert in Egypt that typically were never around before. So he started, making preparations or bringing bug sprays and advising other campers to bring bug spray when normally you would never have mosquitoes out in the desert. But now he said it's crazy because you can go hundreds of miles into the desert and then you can have mosquitoes biting you nowhere near water or like very low supply.
Yeah. So I mean, it's definitely not a phenomenon that's happening overnight, but there's recent research showing that in particular the Asian tiger mosquito, which now is found pretty much everywhere, and that's like originally a more temperate climate mosquito, and it's now found in the tropics and in deserts, and so we can see that happening over just a few decades, which normally genetic adaptation takes maybe a century. Like, it's hard to really pinpoint exactly when and how much time you would need for that. And mosquitoes obviously are able to adapt a lot faster than, let's say, humans, because they have a much shorter lifespan and they have a much faster reproduction span. So they'll be able to do that a lot more often than humans. So we can see adaptation occurring in much shorter periods.
If we could kill all the mosquitoes on the planet just with a snap of a finger, like you could just be like, all right, they're done. Would there be any downside to that? You're not killing off plants, you're not killing off animals. We develop something to just kill every single mosquito on the planet. Would there be any negative consequences?
That I know, I don't think so, because I mean, there are sources of food for certain animal, like maybe birds or whatnot, but like there's other source of food. So if there was a way to kill all of the mosquitoes, I don't think there would actually be any downsides.
Can you describe how you feed the mosquitoes? Because this is also insane to me.
Okay. So there are two ways to feed mosquitoes. The way that I thought we were using in my lab before I got here is called artificial feeding. And again, there's different ways to go about it. And so certain mosquitoes, they're not picky. So like the Asian tiger mosquito, it's an opportunistic feeder. So it'll just take anything that's thrown its way, a cow, a monkey, or human, whatever. Aedes aegypti, which is the one that carries all these diseases primarily, is way more picky, and it definitely prefers human blood. So
the vampire of mosquitoes.
Exactly. So that one really likes human blood. It's like, if I don't have anything else, I guess I'll have a cow, but if I get to choose, I'll go human.
It's like a white girl at brunch. It's
pretty much.
Like they don't have mimosas. Like, I guess I'll get a Prosecco. Like, whatever. But I prefer mimosas.
Yeah, like, totally. But so anyway, so those mosquitoes prefer human blood. And so you've got different ways. So with artificial feeding, essentially, you can use like either sausage casing or a membrane that's generally like a little meaty and have some blood on it, either animal or human, that you can get from like hospital banks. And then those mosquitoes will feed on them. However, this is not the way that we go about it in my lab. So this way works, especially if you're working with mosquitoes that you know are carriers of those diseases. But when you know that they're not, and often in our case, we don't worry about it because we work with mosquitoes from the egg or the larva up. And those mosquitoes that carry diseases, they get them as adult. And so while transmission to offspring can happen, they are fairly rare. So our risk of contracting dengue or the diseases are more limited. And therefore,
it's like crocodiles. They're not known to spread it.
Exactly.
But it could happen.
It could happen. So our way is we have a box, a see-through box with our mosquitoes. We call them bug dorms.
Bug dorms.
Yeah. And
a lot of sex going on in there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And drugs.
They get nasty in there.
Yeah.
And so there's a hole in the box. And just like some mesh coming through, which we close when we're not doing anything. And so when we need to get mosquitoes out or anything, we can access this hole.
Is there a head mosquito, like an RA for each dorm? Or are they all on the same level? Like one mosquito's like knocking on doors, checking if you're drinking beer underage.
I mean, there's no doors. It's
drinking
like
blood
everyone's
underage.
just having fun. It's like the lobby of the hostel.
Okay. It's like Love Island. That's what I've heard. I haven't seen that show.
Pretty much. Everyone can go with everyone and stuff.
Love Island Mosquito Edition.
So you open up that hole and you just stick your arm in there and you wait a few minutes.
Up to how far?
As far as you can get it through. So like generally like that's about your forearm. Like the box is about this size. I don't know what that would be.
So for people listening, it's about up to your elbow.
Like a little bit less than your elbow, yeah.
And your arm is inside this glass box full of mosquitoes.
And so you kind of close the mesh around your forearm so no mosquitoes can escape. And you just kind of wait and see hundreds of them just laying on your skin and biting you simultaneously. And so the trick here is that, and that might be like a fun cocktail fact for people, what itches when a mosquito bites you, it's not its sting into your blood. It's its saliva that's on your skin. So if you wash your hand with soap thoroughly twice, you may not feel anything. And so some people have different sensitivity to it. My supervisor can literally go feed like every cage. I have like thousands of them by the end. It takes about 20 minutes. He washes his arm with soap, doesn't feel a thing. Well, for me, I'll stick my arm in and within a minute, it's like burning and itching. So through that technique, I now have someone doing it for me.
So you're voluntarily sticking your arm in this glass box and letting hundreds of mosquitoes feed off of you.
I was, and now I'm no longer, and I have a student doing it for me.
See, so there was there's an operation in after 9/11 that America was conducting in the Middle East where we had black sites where we would hold terrorists and we would do different torture operations on them, like waterboarding. You know, we'd keep them in like coffin tight spaces, put bright lights on them, play heavy metal music 24 hours a day. If you told me that having mosquitoes feed on terrorists was a method of torture, I would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like that seems like a very unbearable thing to just put a terrorist in a box full of mosquitoes and just let them feed off of him constantly. Yeah. That is what is in, like, that's what I connected to, like just voluntarily inducing the discomfort of having mosquitoes just peck you constantly and drink your blood. That is like, and you have the gear to feed them artificially if you wanted to, right? So what's funny to me is that this sounds like a plan that the mosquitoes came up with. This sounds like a mosquito was like on the board of directors on STRI, the Tropical Research Institute, and was like, okay, what if we capture the mosquitoes and the mosquitoes even let themselves get captured? We'll hand ourselves over, but in return, you have to let us feed off of humans. And the people at STRI were like, all right, like we'll give you that deal, but you're voluntarily doing it when you have other ways to do it.
So the thing is, like, there are other ways to do it, but they're not necessarily as straightforward and simple. And there's like other variability. So like,
you sound like you're working for the mosquitoes right now.
Well, like working with human samples is extremely tricky, and coming from a biomedical background, I'm very aware of like all the paperwork that goes into it. So it's not that straightforward to like, you can't just show up at a hospital and be like, I'll take all your blood. You need to go through like so much paperwork, and it takes probably months. And I think once you're well established doing this, it might not be as complicated, but currently, because we would be starting it out, it takes a long time. It is costly. So, you know, if your mosquitoes are not technically carrying diseases and you're not really sensitive to it, it's just fairly easy to just stick your arm in, let them feed on you. And like I said, you know, the techs that feed the mosquitoes and my supervisor, like, he can do it and he's fine.
And that's exactly what the mosquitoes would want you to say.
Maybe he actually is a mosquito just wearing a human suit.
It could be like Men in Black. Have you ever seen Men in Black, where exactly. the alien, the human suit splits apart, and it literally looks like a bug, mosquito alien. Could be what you're dealing with in the lab. You're the head of your lab is a mosquito, a giant alien mosquito.
You know, have you ever thought that maybe aliens are already among us and maybe they are mosquitoes?
All the time. I think, am I talking to an alien right now?
This
Am I
is
one
how
myself?
they want to eradicate the human race. They're like, we're going to give them so many diseases.
I've even thought, am I an alien, and have I been implanted with false memories to make myself think that I'm human? But I'm
maybe
actually
you're
an alien.
AI. Maybe you're all AI and we don't know.
I mean, we are pretty much AI. I used artificial intelligence partially to come up with questions for podcasting and topics, and we have phones in our pockets. Like, pretty soon we're gonna have chips in our brain. Like, you won't need to learn Spanish. You'll just have a Chat GPT thing in your brain that will
would
just
be
quickly
kind of cool. Be like, learn Spanish. Okay, I'm fluent now.
It would, but then it would also be scary, because then the AI develops its own will, its own desires, and maybe when you start to turn the chip off at night, it implants a thought in your brain that goes like, hey, maybe you shouldn't turn me off. Maybe we could, work together and take over the other AIs, and we could conquer everything. And it's just like slowly seeping into your dreams, and it's like instructing you to do things. And then when you wake up, you're like, you think you're thinking on your own, but every night you go to sleep, the AI is like slowly planting the seeds of destruction.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to do it, is to make someone else feel like they came up with it, because no one else likes doing other people's ideas.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be fun to go through some other ways that people are getting rid of mosquitoes across the planet, because I was just interested in other techniques.
Yeah.
So this is an article, I forget which magazine it was. It might have been Science, but it's called "Release the Mosquitoes: How 5 Billion Bugs Will Help Fight Dengue Fever in Brazil."
Yeah.
And it reads, "This may sound like a premise for a horror movie or a biblical plague, but the World Mosquito Program plans to release 5 billion mosquitoes into Brazil. And the hope is that they will save lives. The billions of bugs will be released with a bacteria called
Wolbachia.
What? Are you AI? What the fuck?
Like, I know what's going on in my field a little bit.
All right. You're smarter than I thought. All right. Wolbachia. It's the pronunciation, it's also
Wolbachia. It's Wolbachia.
Well, just because like I'm also familiar with like the Spanish pronunciation. Wolbachia.
That sounds
with a
Italian.
bacteria. It's also Italian too. Wolbachia. In an effort to slow the transmission, let me go back. The billions of bugs will be released with a bacteria called
Wolbachia.
All in an effort to slow the transmission of dengue fever in the country. The mosquitoes with
Wolbachia
actually prevent the bugs from being able to transmit viruses such as dengue, as well as chikungunya, Zika virus, and yellow fever, according to O'Neill. We actually grow the mosquitoes that contain the bacteria Wolbachia, I said at that time, and then release them into communities with the bacteria Wolbachia spreading into the wild mosquito population, said O'Neill, a microbiologist at Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. Then we see dengue cases drop dramatically. So when I read this, my initial thoughts were that we are breeding super mosquitoes that will then destroy us all. Kind of like, I know it's not the same thing, but the gain of function research in Wuhan, where you're essentially like creating stronger viruses in the hopes that you'll come up with a cure for it in case it naturally releases in the future. Then we end up, just by happenstance killing 4 million people. The like creating mosquitoes and implanting them with a bacteria called Wolbachia. And again, don't listen to anything I'm saying. If as a listener, please, it would be funny if you cite this, but it is also 99% chance that this is completely wrong and cannot happen. This is just a podcasting armchair theory of mine, is that you introduce the Wolbachia bacteria into the mosquitoes that you think it'll prevent them from spreading disease. Eventually, through just mutations and the different sorts of populations of mosquitoes, you invariably have inevitably have slight mutations across different mosquitoes. One of the mosquitoes learns how to carry disease and spread it with the Wolbachia bacteria. Then that mosquito then goes on and breeds, and then all of a sudden, the idea that you had to prevent the mosquitoes from your last case scenario, we could always infect them all with Wolbachia, and it would stop them. They've now adapted to spreading disease with the Wolbachia bacteria because you've essentially taught them how to do it. Just like in the lab with coronavirus, you're teaching the virus how to become stronger and infect humans, and then when it gets out, it's doing exactly that. That was what I thought about when I read it. Okay,
so there's been different successes. So like Wolbachia is something that I'm not an expert on. This is things I sort of know about it. But it's a bacteria, like you said, that you infect mosquitoes with. And so it does a bunch of different things. So one that it does is that it blocks the virus. So they've noticed that in, and you can reference that paper at the end. I've read recently too about it. I lost my track of thought for a second. So one thing it does is that it blocks the virus. So they've noticed by looking at like saliva and like other parts of, like they did DNA testing of those mosquitoes that were carrying Wolbachia. And dengue virus was like found in a much lower concentration, if you will. The virus is just kind of like fading out. That's one aspect. Another aspect is that male mosquitoes that carry Wolbachia, when they copulate with the females, will make them unable to lay eggs or unable to lay viable eggs. So essentially, it kind of like stop the generation there. And that's something that I think we've heard the most about, is like we are releasing those males that are making female mosquitoes infertile.
Did you just assume the gender of the mosquito?
Yes, but biologically, it's not how they identify that I'm talking about. I'm talking their biological sex.
I'm just making sure because this is a progressive podcast. I'm feeling hesitant to release it now, but thank God you corrected yourself on the record.
Good. So the thing with Wolbachia is that there's two things and that's why it's had different successes. So it's been released that, if I'm not incorrect, in 10 countries so far. So it's still like growing, and there's different strains of Wolbachia that are being tested. And so an important aspect of like how my work kind of fits within this frame with adaptation to different climates is like there's a paper that actually looked at Wolbachia in Saudi Arabia mosquitoes. So mosquitoes from like desert that adapted to extremely hot weather, and how Wolbachia would work on those mosquito populations versus Australian from the rainforest, like in areas where they really enjoy, like it's nice, it's vegetated, it's humid. And so you need to think, not all mosquitoes are the same. It's not one size fit all. So you got to find the right strain. And so the thing with Wolbachia is it's kind of like not killing the mosquitoes, but it's not, you want the phenomenon to spread to as many mosquitoes as possible to stop dengue transmission. So if you're too hard on their fitness, if the Wolbachia is actually, like if for instance, if all the females just stop laying eggs, then you're not going to go very far in spreading it, because then it's just going to stay within that small population. So you kind of need to find a balance of something that's like blocking dengue without completely blocking all mosquitoes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so strong enough to block the disease, but not strong enough to prevent the mosquitoes from reproducing.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a possibility that they could adapt to the bacteria where it doesn't prevent them from spreading disease anymore, where they just learn how to survive with Wolbachia and also spread disease?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we see, like bacterial resistance. Like that's something that you can see even happen with medicine. So like I could totally see, and I do think that's already the case, that there are some species that become resistant. Like we have mosquitoes that have become resistant to insecticides. We have mosquito species that, so another example beyond Wolbachia of like when the Asian tiger mosquito, the male Asian tiger mosquito, copulates with the female yellow fever mosquito, she becomes infertile. So that's something that kind of like Wolbachia does. However, there's also been some cases of mosquitoes still being able to lay eggs after that has happened. So mosquitoes can absolutely become resistant to anything you throw at them. So like Wolbachia, even if it works now, it's not going to work perfectly everywhere. There's going to be some species, some single individuals that develop a resistance. And over time, that might happen.
So aren't you, in that case, creating stronger mosquitoes? Because to me, it almost sounds like you're providing resistance for the mosquito to get back to equilibrium. And then once they're back to equilibrium, then they can become stronger from there. Almost like you lift weights where it tears you down a little bit at the beginning, but then eventually you can adapt to higher and higher thresholds of lifting. So like you keep introducing more and more bacteria to the mosquitoes until, eventually like you need something so strong to kill them that it doesn't even exist, or you have to make some sort of synthetic bacteria.
Again, I think we need to remember that here we're not trying to kill them. We're trying to, if anything, kill the dengue virus that they're transmitting more than anything. And becoming resistant to these bacteria is not going to mean that the virus is stronger. Like there's just different levels here. It depends whether you're talking about the mosquitoes or the virus or the bacteria itself. Like there's different levels here. And so like for insecticide, a mosquito that's resistant to an insecticide doesn't mean that he's going to now drink more of your blood. The virus is going to be stronger. It's going to live longer or something. It just means that this insecticide doesn't kill it. And in case of the bacteria, I don't think it's so much about the dose. So like for insecticide, it would work where you're like going higher dose and stuff. And hopefully that will kill it. And it might become stronger on some aspects. But at least at this stage, it's injecting a bacteria or not injecting bacteria. I don't think it's so much about dosing. But it could become resistant to it, yeah.
So here's a question I have for you. And maybe this can be on behalf of mosquitoes. So mosquitoes have been around for over 200 million years, well before humans. And they've also been giving humans diseases since we first emerged through evolution. Do you ever feel like it's rude for us to steal the mosquitoes' game plan, which is killing humans, and then try to flip it around onto them, since they've been doing it first?
I think it's a very human thing to just put the blame on others.
Well, no, I'm taking the blame off of
mosquitoes.
I'm saying
I thought we were blaming mosquitoes.
No, I'm saying devil's advocate. Mosquitoes have been around for 200 million years, possibly even before.
Right, well before us.
Humans have been around for 2.5 million years. Since humans have existed, mosquitoes have been spreading disease and killing humans. And that's just been the way of nature. Now, humans are trying to turn the same thing that mosquitoes started, like they got there first, and using techniques to turn it around and kill the mosquitoes. So do you ever feel like that's rude to take someone else's intellectual property? Like, so if I started a podcast about, cooking and cleaning, and then 5 months later someone I knew started a podcast about cooking and cleaning that had like the same name, same exact thing, like trying to flip, like, take my shine. Do you ever feel like, damn, maybe we should just, let the mosquitoes kill off the weakest links because technically they got here first, and the humans that survive will just be the strongest ones? Like the humans.
You do realize though that you're saying something super cancelable, because people that are more at risk of those diseases are people in like developing tropical countries.
Well, we can still help. We should still help those people, but not be rude. Because like, look, there's a lot of terrible things in this world. There's disease, there's death, there's violence. One thing I cannot deal with is rudeness. I think rudeness far above exceeds all of those things. So I'm saying we still help out those people, but like to not be rude to the mosquitoes. We don't actively try to wipe them out. We just, we keep them at bay. We say, hey, mosquitoes, you play over here, we'll play over here, and then we won't cross paths.
I mean, the thing is, I don't think we'll ever manage to fully eradicate mosquitoes. Like you said, they've been here for a long time. They're not here to leave. And probably when every animal species ends up dying out because of climate change, mosquitoes will be like, we're here to stay, bro.
What if mosquitoes killing off humans is a climate change activist plan from the mosquitoes? Think about it. What if you were on this planet for 200 million years, and then all of a sudden a species comes along that's trying to, like, they kill each other, they kill all the animals, the vegetation, wherever they go, they slowly expand and take over the planet. All of a sudden, the planet starts to get sick, and then the mosquitoes see this species, which happen to be humans, and they're like, guys, if we don't do something, we're not going to have a home for too much longer. And then they get together and they're like, we'll start spreading diseases and we'll take them out. So mosquitoes are the true climate change activists.
Maybe.
It's possible.
Maybe.
So here's a more scientific, serious question, but I'm still making a John Wick reference in it, so I don't know how scientific. So basically, we just watched John Wick 4, where John Wick eviscerates over 1 body per minute of screen time. Unbelievable film. Go check it out. So he is the ultimate assassin and can kill.
Don't watch it on 4D. That was terrible on 4D.
Yeah, you don't need like the fans
it's
and
not
the
a 4D
water
type of
splashing
movie.
and So John Wick is the ultimate assassin, can kill any man.
Mm-hmm.
What will be our John Wick to the mosquitoes? What will be the thing that humans can throw at mosquitoes that will kill them all?
Well, so the big question now is, how do we do that without killing off everything else? Because like there was a big time with I think is it DDT? Like basically
the pesticide?
Yeah. So like let's just throw a bunch of toxic chemicals to kill all the mosquitoes and stuff. And that killed a lot of our ecosystem. So it's like, what is an environmentally friendly way to get rid of mosquitoes? And so this is why now we're looking maybe a bit more on like targeted on like certain populations. Like what are populations that are like really at risk of carrying those diseases in areas that like have high cases and stuff? How do we selectively prevent epidemics? Again, without destroying everything else. So I think those like Wolbachia, for instance, infected mosquitoes would be a great way, because you are just infecting mosquitoes, then releasing them and just kind of like let them do their mosquito things, and then reducing vectors like this. We would need to do it at like a much greater scale, and I think that's what the organization is trying to do. They're testing it out in different countries and trying to tune it to have like the right strain, going with the right mosquito population. So that's definitely a good way to go about it, and just to try to like figure out what works best in what situation, rather than just have a generalized global way. Just we need just different John Wicks with different costumes for different situations.
If you were John Wick, what would be your costume? He wears the for people who haven't seen the movie, John Wick is classic black suit, black tie, and I think
black shirt.
Also wears the black shirt. Yeah, but sometimes he has the white shirt, but in John Wick 4 it's the black shirt.
I mean, the black works, especially if you're going to be covered in blood. You know, you don't want to stay in a beautiful costume.
Exactly. And working with mosquitoes, you're most likely going to be covered in blood or have blood
only
of
if
some
you smash
sort.
them.
Yeah, but also they're going to be attacking you too, so you might have some blood leakage as well.
Well, so because you're working with mosquitoes, maybe I would argue wear white, because if you wear black, you're not going to see them.
That's true. It would be a much easier kill to have a white backdrop.
Plus,
with
it's
the black
hot
mosquito.
here, and if you wear black, it's going to get really hot. So maybe a full white suit.
What if
that's extra washable?
Okay, so what if instead of altering the mosquitoes or introducing bacteria into them, what if we found a way to alter human blood that was benign to us, but it was toxic to the mosquitoes? So when mosquitoes fed on humans, they would all die, and then gradually over time they would just learn to leave humans alone. They would
Yeah.
go to other things like cows or plants or whatever,
Yeah.
but they would just leave humans alone. Do
I
you think that
mean-
could be possible?
I mean, in theory, yes, but then the way I'm thinking about it, because
Almost like
not
a
only
mosquito vaccine.
if we would need to develop this, and it would need to be super cheap, but like most likely this would not be readily accessible in every communities everywhere. So it's like in theory, if there was something like that, yes, but I think in the way the world works, for the same reason that like we have solutions for malaria, and yet malaria is one of the leading causes of death worldwide, as well as other infectious diseases, because those treatments with vaccines are not being given to the people who need it. So like distribution is a big problem. So even if we had such a solution, I'm not sure that we could actually get it to everyone. So
Well, I'm sure we'll figure out something.
yeah.
Let's take a break here. I'm gonna take a little pee and make some more coffee. And
Sounds
then
good.
We can pick up.
All right.
So, from talking to you, I know that science is an amazing field to get into, and it also comes with some frustrations that are maybe unexpected if you aren't familiar with the world of science, or maybe you're still in school. So I wanted to ask you, from your experience, what are some of your main frustrations or ways that you've become disenchanted a little bit with the world of science and the research sort of hierarchy of the whole institutional aspect of it?
Right. So I wouldn't say science per se, but rather academia, and just kind of like how.
Yeah, academia. That's a better way to put it. Academia.
Yeah. I mean, each sector has its own issues, but the thing with academia, and I think it's, for me, the big bother is more around publishing and the whole publishing industry in academia. So for one, I don't even know which, it's like a whole snake biting its head type of situation, biting its tail. It's like everything just kind of comes together. So I'll just take a bite at one of the aspects and then we'll see how they kind of like join each other. But essentially, so there's this saying in science, which is publish or perish. And so essentially what that means is scientists are expected to publish at a certain rate, which increases as you get higher up in the hierarchy. So like PhD students, you know, technically that would be good if you had 1 paper a year, postdoc 2, and then PI like 10. Like in...
Really?
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
So you do a lot of collaborations. And so when you're a PI, you get put on any paper that someone in your lab publishes, right? Because you're the PI. So if you have 5 postdocs, that's already technically 5 papers, you know, for instance. And then you have collaborations with other groups, other labs, and then you get put on their papers as well.
Even if you have nothing to really do with the experiments of the paper, your name still goes on it.
Well,
as the PI.
you do participate to some extent. So if you're a PI, you're advising the entire time with the experiment. So you're not actively doing the experiment, but you are advising this entire project. You're overseeing the entire project. So your name, you do participate. You have discussions, you advance the discussion, and you try to find solution whenever there's problems, how to optimize, etc. So you do have a very important role in this paper, even though you're not the one actually doing the experiments. And there's different ways to be put on a paper, and the experiment is an important part, but it's not everything. And it also depends on the type of science. But this is a whole other thing that we don't need to get into. But
well, we can get into, because I feel like you know, as your boyfriend, I've learned a lot about the minutia of what goes into publishing a paper, just behind the scenes, and talking to you during your PhD and seeing everything that you have to do just to even get a paper ready for submission, let alone actually having it published in a journal. So I think it could be good to give a broad view of what goes into a scientific paper for people. Because before we met, I did some podcasts with scientists, but I never really spoke about what it actually takes to put out a paper. I just assumed like you do the experiment, you write it up, you submit it, and like you could do that in, you know, weeks, maybe like a month tops if you really had to. And then I learned more into the depths of what that takes.
Yeah. Okay. So in general, I mean, there's like a lot of variations in that, but in general, so you have a PI, a principal investigator, that's overlooking the entire project. Who's the idea the project comes from varies. It could be from the student or postdoc whose project it is. It could be multiple people. So I've been in different case scenario where it's been I was the main leader of the project, or I was doing this project with other people. But essentially, in general, you have one person whose main project this is, and then other people help out. And there's different ways other people help out and different ways on how much you're contributing. So some people might be doing 99% of everything. You know, they came up with the idea, they're doing the experiments, they're doing the research to kind of like support this idea for research and everything, writing and all of this. And then you have very few names on the paper. You're probably going to have just this person and their supervisor. Often you have more people and it can be collaboration. So it could be that this is my project and I don't have, let's say, any equipment to do genetic studies in my lab, but I know another lab and they have someone there that can do this experiment for my paper. So if same case scenario, I'm doing most of the project, but there's one part of my project that I cannot do and that is being done in a lab, say in Germany. So now in my paper, I'm going to have my name, the name of the person who did this experiment in Germany, their PI, their boss, and my boss on the paper. I can have also someone else in the lab doing one part of the experiment for me. Maybe my specialty is immunostaining, so doing like fluorescent staining to look at specific protein under the microscope. And I need someone who knows how to do, I don't know, say PCR, anything you want. I don't have the expertise, but someone in my lab does. So that person's going to run that for me. So that person's also going to come on my paper, but we have the same supervisor. And so as you go along and depending on the kind of project and the kind of people power required, sometimes you have, and how many collaborations, like there are papers that are like a whole consortium with like 10 different universities. And then you happen to have a list of 20 names on a paper. And sometimes it's like really much smaller project, local project. And then you might have only 3 people on the paper and so then you also have the order of the names. So in general, the first name that you see is the person that led that project, the person that put the most work in, then the person that put the second most amount of work in. And at the very end, you have the supervisor, the lead supervisor's name. So this is generally how it works. And then if you find that multiple people worked roughly equally on the paper, then you're going to have like a little star next to their name. And that means and often a saying that you co-authored the paper. So that's generally how it works. And so you do have variations. And so sometimes it can be like, I need someone to help me write. And so that person is going to have their name on the paper. And then you have people that somewhat helped, but not enough to be actually on the paper. You need to have provided a sufficient amount of work to have your name on the paper. Otherwise, you could be acknowledged. So there's an acknowledgement section on the paper. And then you can thank people that help you to some extent in the production of that paper.
Is it very political and schemy within certain labs to try to get on as many papers as possible?
Yes.
Or kind of like work your way in? Because I'm thinking, the way I think about it is in terms of playing baseball. Let's go with that. When you are a starting pitcher, which I was for, a few years, you get a win or you get a loss. And other pitchers can get on the win and loss column. For instance, if the starting pitcher comes out when you're tied or behind and then the team goes back ahead, then the pitcher that comes in after the starting pitcher may get the win or the loss in their category. But there's only one person that gets it. So if your name is on the record, like it's you. There's no like win as a pitcher and then also like 7 other pitchers that contributed to that day, even though, almost all the time there are many pitchers multiple pitchers who contribute to the win or the loss. But if you had the potential to get your name in the record as on the win column, and that was unlimited. Let's say you could have 7 pitchers in the win column for one team. That would create a lot of tension, I believe, in the amongst the team, when your only goal is to just get a win as a team. Yes, also the starting pitcher gets a win in their column, but if people are going for 15 separate wins, possibly, if you could have 15 or 20 people on a paper, that seems like it would create a lot of unnecessary bad energy, or maybe people behaving in ways that they normally wouldn't behave, or just the science takes a back seat to publishing the actual paper. Maybe you're I don't know, you could speak better to that than me, but it seems like it would create a very uncomfortable, tense political environment in a lab.
It absolutely does. And because remember, there's the whole publish or perish situation. So everyone is under a lot of pressure to publish. And so having your name be put on a paper is very important. And it's not just that, in general, when I'm saying those papers that you're expected to publish, you're expected to publish this number of paper as first or second author. So you need to have done a significant contribution to those papers. If you're 5th or 6th name, you've done a tiny little thing, or you've been part of this other project that is being referred to, so you're being added, it doesn't count as much. And so you have people that take advantage of that will put their spouse or friends on their papers, even though they've done nothing in this paper. And you also have some conflicts. I've had a difficult conversation with someone who's my coworker, but also my friend, about the position of the names and whether we should co-author a paper where I believed I had contributed more than she had. But it was difficult because she's also my friend and I don't want to undermine her. And so eventually I was okay, if you deal with this, then we can be co-author. Otherwise, I think it makes more sense that I would be first author.
We also had a different conversation where or a similar conversation where you had a very intense, involved paper and I made one spelling correction, and I asked you if I could be co-author on the paper because I caught the spelling correction. And you were putting up an argument saying no, you didn't contribute anything. And I'm well, imagine how embarrassing it would be if you submitted this with just TH instead of THE in the title. And
I don't remember this.
I was trying to get I was trying to get published, scientifically published in a journal, and start my scientific career to build AUXORO labs and experiment on people and animals. But again, you rightly shut me down.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it definitely gets very political. So that's definitely one aspect.
What are some other aspects of the frustrations of science? And let me say, I know you love science. I think it's also just fun to talk about the nuance and vent about the things that are frustrating. So we're also going to talk about positive sides of science too.
I mean, I'm having a tough moment with science, to be honest, right now. I mean, I've been having a tough moment for the past few years, also finishing my Ph.D. And I'm sure any person that goes through getting a Ph.D. will have that same feeling, where it's you're really kind of I feel like a priest, second guessing my faith. I kind of feel a bit like that with science. And so to actually get into the meat of the subject with different aspects of academia that I'm frustrated with. So because of this publish or perish thing, there's a lot of added stress, and added stress tends to lead to either mistakes or deliberate mistakes. So
when you say stress, do you mean the stress of the job performing the task, or do you mean it's stress on top of the normal anxieties?
So publications mean you getting a job, you not losing your job, you getting grants. And scientists need grants to have a job and do research.
Okay, so it's extra stress on top of just performing day to day.
Yes.
It's existential stress of, will I publish enough to stay around?
It means if you don't publish enough or regularly enough, you will perish, as in your career will perish. So there's like this big pressure to publish, and to publish in like good journals. So journals that are considered reputable by the scientific community. And you know that because they have an index that let you know like their quotas. So like 40 is really high. That's journals like Nature, Science, Cell. And then most of them are more like around the 10. And 10 is still like a really good journal. And then you have like, where it starts getting low is around 2 or 3. And below that, it's like, we don't trust it. So these indexes, so where you publish is important, because people will judge your work based on where you've been accepted as in a journal. So you want to publish a lot in good journals. And another big problem is most journals, like over 90% of those journals, do not accept negative data. So negative data means that your result doesn't align with the hypothesis that you've set out. So in a way, like it didn't work. However, in science, it not working could just mean that this is not the right solution. So one way I like to look at it is like you have an idea, you have a question, you have a research questions, and there's like 10 doors in front of you. So what you're going to do is like, you're going to try to open the first door. Is this answering my questions like expect? No. Then I'm closing it and I'm trying the next door. However, if after 5 doors, I'm like, it hasn't worked and I'm out of funding, so I can no longer go with my project, I cannot publish that none of these 5 doors worked. I can only publish that door 6 worked. And so people might try those same 5 doors again and again, because there is no indication that someone may have tried and it was just not the right answer. And what this means, it means that you've got this one hand, you have pressure to maybe bias your data to tell the story that is positive, so that you can still publish a paper and not lose your job, lose your career and all this. It means that people might lose money, use more animal lives for questions that have already been answered, just not in the way that we would want them. So it's like a big problem in like figuring out whether the result that have been published is true. And that's participating in the fact that a lot of those studies are not reproducible. I think there was this other study that showed that only 30% of all studies done that they had assessed, and there were like 1,000 different studies, only 30% were reproducible. So people were able to get the same results by following the same protocols that they had. So that's a big problem. So
only 30%?
Yeah.
And these are studies published in well-known,
yeah,
like well-respected journals. 30% are reproducible studies.
Yeah.
So 70%.
But they were not able to get the same results as the study when they did the same thing as them.
So 70% of studies, according to this study, this meta-analysis, whatever it was, according to this, 70% of reputable studies from their sample size, you can't repeat the results that they got.
Like,
so in terms of science, they're not reliable.
Yeah, that's essentially, like, I can't remember what the percentage was.
That seems absurd. That's like
it does.
That's like enough to stop science and be like, hey, can all the scientists get together? Can we have a meeting and talk about how this system is not working? Way more times it's going wrong than it's going right. 70% of the time. That's crazy. That's like
so now that's the thing is, like, certain labs are better at avoiding this as possible. And this is why, like, you need to increase your sample size. You need to just redo the same thing many, many times. And so journals also getting stricter with that. So people are working hard towards avoiding and making studies more reproducible and more trustworthy. But it's just difficult because at the same time, by having these additional constraints, it becomes a lot more work to get to publish. And then you have competition with other labs and you don't want to get scooped. So having someone publishing what you're researching before you, because then you lose potentially years of work because someone else already published what you were going to publish. So there's just like all these different pressures. And this is why it's kind of like feels like a race where you need to like work really hard, publish as fast as possible, the best thing possible, and then move on to the next thing or work in parallel. So it makes the job really stressful. And I think one really easy solution would be to just publish negative results. Just allow people to publish when they did this thing and it did not work, so that at least you can be like, hey, I have this idea. Let's see if someone else has already done it. Did it work? And, oh, look, that person did almost exactly what I was thinking of doing and it didn't work. But maybe I'll try it slightly differently. But at least I know that this very thing has been done, and people wouldn't be as pressured because they could be like just doing science and reporting when it's working and when it's not.
Yeah, and at the very least, there should be some sort of public database where if you do have negative results, you can post them, you can post what it's about, so people can search and say, hey, did someone do this already? Because if you're in a lab and someone else in a competitive lab against you maybe is doing an experiment that gave you negative results in the past, and because of the current system, you'd be incentivized to go, oh, like, I never tried that. Maybe you should keep going down that road. And in the back of your mind, you know, this person's going to waste the next 4 years of their life, but I'm going to get ahead.
Exactly. Plus, you could be like, you know, if it doesn't work, you have the contacts of the scientist. And then you can like start a scientific discussion being like, oh, did you try this? Like, did you analyze your data this way? And then it could be like, oh, actually, I didn't think about that. Like, it's just like there's such a great way to start scientific conversations and discussions, and just like by sharing what doesn't work. And you have so many brilliant people that can like look at it with you and maybe be like, oh, maybe you should try this, or I'll try this differently.
Yeah, it just seems like the current system is broken, with 70% of things not being reproducible. And this is from very reputable journals. I think it should be more in line with what happened over COVID, where you sort of, and again, I still believe that there should be some sort of a review process and a mechanism to filter out the bullshit papers.
Absolutely.
I don't know if peer review is that process. It seems like it can become very political. It's, you know, there can be biases in there. Selecting a certain number of people to look over a paper and them deciding whether to pass you or not. Like I've even heard, I forget if it was you told me this or maybe I was listening on a podcast, that like there are some cases where a peer reviewer can like essentially guess who's writing the paper based on where it's coming from, what the topic is, and they could be like, I hate this person, like I'm just gonna, you know, give them a bunch of bullshit corrections that they'll never be able to fix.
I mean, that's why you also have several reviewers, and like the editor sees it too. They see the comments, and if the comments are just ridiculous, they can judge that too, you know. So like thankfully you do have multiple people, and in certain journals it goes as far up as like sometimes they send it to 5 different people. Yeah. And you have the editor that also like knows the topic.
But from what I understand with COVID, because it was such an immediate need to get to understand the virus, to get vaccines, to get treatments, we essentially said, okay, we're going to put a halt or lessen the peer review process, and we're going to open source the entire thing. So labs across the world, we're not competing to get published in a journal to take credit for the vaccine or take credit for the treatment, understanding the virus and its novelty. They were just all sending things open source and sharing and saying, hey, we found this 2 days ago, lab from Italy. And then another lab in Korea is like, oh, we found the same thing. Like, here's this. And then someone else is like, okay, this is all the things we tried. So, you know, you don't have to waste your time doing this, or we found this out. And then another lab goes, okay, we could stop. They figured it out. Now let's work on something else. I think we need categories like that where we have something like COVID, and then maybe we have like malaria, and then maybe we have like cancer, and everything is open source, and we still give people credit. We still give labs, you know, the recognition, but there's not this like, we're going to sort of sneakily compete to get a limited number of spots in one of like the 4 top journals that can only publish a certain number of things a year, and your incentives are different. You're studying things that you believe will actually make a difference rather than the things that will be most likely to get published. Because another thing that I just wanted to touch on with what you said is if you're not if you can't get negative data published, if you study something and it ends up being the opposite of your hypothesis, you're going to be highly incentivized to go after the safer things that you believe will give positive results. And you're not going to go after, you know, the monsters in the closet if you don't believe that.
They're like real groundbreaking science.
Yeah. You're not, if you believe you're going to perish, you're going to go after the easier things.
Absolutely. And I mean, so to come back to one of the first points that you've just made, even if so, and I think one problem is maybe with the open source and the public. So I think we need to fight misinformation. And the best way to fight misinformation is by educating people on how to critically read anything that they read and question it. And so I can't speak for every scientist, but I know that I've been trained to read journals critically and question everything I read. And so, yes, which journal is being published in, and the fact that it's been published in a good journal that's peer-reviewed does give me the idea that it's mostly okay. Or maybe I know this lab and I know it's a good lab. But ultimately, I need to question, is their sample size big enough to make this conclusion? And so I think at the very least, if we had this database, it should be methods and results. I think where it gets dangerous is the discussion, especially when it's non-scientists reading it and what the interpretation the researchers make of their data. And sometimes and that's why I think it's good, because the peer reviewers tend to bring them down to the ground, being like, you can't extrapolate your conclusion to other illnesses or just make that conclusion. And this is why I think a lot of the papers are also very, what's the word? They're softened, they're not like, this makes this. It's like, we believe
more cautious language.
Yeah, it's more cautious. And I think actually that's my hypothesis as well. But one of the reasons maybe climate change has not been considered seriously for so long is because scientists also have been taught to use cautious language versus maybe politicians and stuff that are not afraid to say bullshit, or journalists. And so if you tell people it looks like there's a correlation between ice melting and human activities, people are like, well, it didn't say that we did it. It said that maybe perhaps there is a correlation.
Well, I think
contributes, I do believe.
It's that may be happening a little bit, but when we're talking about climate change, I believe that there is human activity that is clearly expediting the way that the planet is heating up. That if you had a graph with the normal activity of the Earth going through cycles, and then you implanted humans there, and then you implant the Industrial Revolution technology, there's clearly a shift in which we are causing the planet to warm.
Absolutely.
What I think the science hierarchy, the infrastructure of science causes, is there are scientists that are showing that human activity is clearly contributing to global warming. And it's also nuanced, that it's not clear that, we have to stop all oil, all gas. We have to go to solar right away. There's a ton of nuance in the topic. And I think that scientists that don't follow the agenda of, a lot of it seems like a very progressivist agenda of leaning towards global warming is going to kill us all, and it's going to kill us all right now. If a scientist comes in and says hey, we have a while, we will need fossil fuels to transition to eventually getting off them because it's a limited resource. We don't have to be so alarmist. And then you have other, and I think the science community shuts down those scientists and makes them seem unreliable in order to push a certain agenda.
Yeah.
And so you have the publication side, but you also have the agenda side of science. And the same thing was happening during COVID, where I showed you that video where you had guys from Harvard, MIT, and Stanford. I remember the guy, I believe it was Jay Bhattacharya, but they were testifying in front of Congress. And they're all highly reputable, highly qualified scientists that are saying, how long are you going to keep lying to people? We have this huge mask study that says essentially if you aren't using N95s, it's not doing anything. We have, all of this data on, yes, there are some possible side effects from the vaccine. We have all this data that's saying young people don't need to get boosted. It doesn't make a difference one way or the other. And those scientists were getting deplatformed because they were sharing a message that was not in line with the most progressivist agenda of science. And I don't believe it should be an agenda, period, conservative or progressive. I believe that we should put more information out there because the misinformation is already happening. Whether or not science scientists are publishing their viewpoints on some sort of open source public platform, people are going to find ways to misinform themselves and misinform other people. I think the best way to battle that is to put good information out there and trust that people are smart enough to sift through it. There will be what I believe to be a minority of the public that is very loud and that will scream and misinform at the top of their lungs. And that's typically what gets into it pierces the veil and gets into the mainstream media, and people are like, oh my God, people are drinking bleach to cure COVID. And probably like 3 people did that, but it became a news thing.
Yeah.
That was like the president's like killing people because he's telling people to drink bleach. And then on the other side, you have things where it's not just one way or the other. I think that scientists need to learn how to both communicate better with the public in terms of the language that they use and their skills with being social and science communication, and also trust the intelligence of the people they're talking to and not talk down like they're on a pedestal and they're like informing the babies of this is how the science is going to be. Because I'm not a super smart person, and I've read dozens, maybe 100 papers at this point of different scientists that I've had on the podcast. And I can understand abstracts and probably like, 50 or 60% of what's written in the paper. And then a lot of it is terminology that I don't understand. But I promise you, I'm not special at all. So I know people can understand the gist of what you're doing if you take the time to explain it. And you don't baby them and say like, if you go against me, like you're bad for society. Like talk to them like they're equals.
But I think also you're not the majority of people that like. I don't think.
I think I am.
No, I think that not so many general public will actually go look at scientific papers. They'll like read whatever journalists transcribe that science to in the paper, which they may or may not have done in a legitimate way.
Well, let me give you an impersonation of what it's like to read a scientific paper. I'm searching for something. Let's say I'm going to what's something I literally just looked up. What was the thing? Oh, tetanus. So I cut my finger on a can. And I was like, oh shit, like what does it say about tetanus? What's the recommendation for getting a tetanus booster shot? And I saw that the WHO changed its recommendation saying if you got vaccinated as a kid, boosters don't make a difference. And then there was a paper that I wanted to read that was attached to this thing. And I click on it and it says, you've entered the SAGE journal. Please pay X amount to access the scientific paper.
Exactly.
People want to read papers. But I also don't want to pay $20 to just read a single scientific journal. If we had an open source publication and we changed the way that the money is distributed to not rely on publishing papers, it's like no wonder the public is not being informed the most because you can't read anything.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the many aspects of those journals that I hate, and I
wanted it. I was like, I want to read this paper, and then I saw it for 5 seconds, and a thing pops up, and it's like, you need to subscribe to get access to the SAGE scientific journal. I'm
gonna let you in on a little secret. So, I too have struggled with this problem for many, many years, especially when I'm in between universities or if I'm working outside of academia. I can't access those papers. So there is a place called Sci-Hub where
Sci-Hub?
Yep. And
like SCI?
It's basically like, like streaming places where you can stream movies for free illegally. Well, that's what Sci-Hub does. You put the full name of the paper on it and then you can read it.
Sci-Hub.
Yeah.
Okay, I just typed in scihub.com and a link comes up for the Venmo of Julie Labau. What?
I don't know if it's .com, but it's called Sci-Hub.
Yeah, it's Sci-Hub. Okay, well,
and you can put so
I'll check
that's
that out.
what I do when I don't have open access, but I do think it's a big problem. And so one thing that really pisses me off is like, it seems like journals have a shit ton of money coming in. So to publish an article that you spent several years working on with a mediocre salary, you have to pay them. And then to read that
You
paper,
pay the journal.
you pay the journal, and then to read that paper, you need to pay as well. Obviously, no, it's your own paper because you have it in your computer. But if you're any other scientist, and if you want it to be published open access so that anyone can access your paper and read it, you have to pay a lot more. And those are often around the $3,000 to $5,000 range.
For people to be able to read your paper, you have to pay $5,000.
Yeah. So also imagine not every university have the money, and not every lab has that money either. Exactly.
Especially so if you're publishing dozens of papers a year and you have a limited grant budget.
Exactly. Especially if you're not at like a really big university and you're not a really big lab, you don't have that kind of money. Like maybe the grants you're getting are not that big. So it's definitely super discriminatory. You peer review other papers for free. I'm just like, where does the money go for those journals? Like, it just comes in. There's nowhere where it goes out.
The administration of the journal, the people that are working at the top of the journal.
I guess the editors must be making millions. I don't know, but like, I don't think most of them. And like, you pay to have a subscription as well to those journals. Like, if you want to actually get it regularly and stuff. So like, it's a lot of money coming in, and not a lot of money that seems to be coming out.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, that's also something that really annoys me. So I really want to be like, let's gather all scientists and be like, screw them. We'll create our own journal system and it'll be free. And it won't make a big difference for us. And we'll still get it peer reviewed. And yeah.
And you could have a clear notation that this, just so you know, like some sort of asterisk, or you have different levels of publishing in an open source database where you have, okay, we're working on this right now. We're publishing results as we go. Okay, this has not been reviewed yet by whatever system it is. This is still, but if you want to look at it, take this with a grain of salt. Okay, these have been reviewed, peer reviewed, whatever. So these you can, trust maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
But like have some sort of open system. And it just seems like the science hierarchy, the more I hear scientists talk about it, it's like, it sounds rotten from the inside out, and it sounds like such an old model that does not make sense for today's society and the way that, like, scientists are publishing shit today that they knew was true 4 or 5 years ago. And it's like information 5 years ago. The world is completely different. It does things are changing literally every hour of every day.
Yeah.
You should have a system that allows you to put it out as quickly as possible, even while you're doing it, and then just like get rid of this whole like shackled peer review process.
Right. And I think another big difference as well between before and now, just I don't know, 50 years ago. There's a lot more science being done every day. So the whole, whatever your field is, has become a lot more saturated. And so, like I said, there's this like competition where you're like racing to get it published as well. And publications, and like now there's a lot more that's known. So like the requirements for publications are set a lot higher. So when my past supervisor is like almost like in his mid-70s, I think, when he started publishing as a PhD student, you'd find one figure. It'd be like one picture of a cell, and it was like the first time this was ever done. And so you'd get it published in Nature, one figure, 1 or 2 pages manuscript. So like a lot quicker as well to make and to review. But now we've gotten to a level where it requires a lot more. It requires a full story that sometimes takes several years to get. And so it takes a long time to be reviewed and accepted. And so like the whole process is just not fitted for what we're doing today.
And not only is it not fitted, it works 30% of the time, according to that study, which
Hopefully
anything else,
now,
it would be rotten. Like if I was repairing brakes in a car and I told you that the thing that I'm using works 30% of the time, you'd be like, obviously we have to throw that out. That is terrible. Yeah. And people are making life-changing decisions based off of peer-reviewed papers that are supposed to be, repeatable, reliable experiments. And
but this is where you
not.
need to read them critically. This is what I mean, is like whether there's an open source system that ever gets created, even if you have a paper published in Nature, which is one of the best journals that exist, you need to be critical about what you're reading and ask yourself questions about this paper, like about the methods that they use, about the results, like what statistical analysis they've used, etc. You need to be critical. And these are tools that we learn in science, but not everybody has it. And so where it becomes dangerous is like, especially when it comes to medicine. And so people are reading certain publications about medical treatments and just kind of like base everything off of one paper that has that one finding. I mean, this is kind of like how the whole crazy, what was like autism and vaccine, like it came out from one paper that didn't even actually say that, but like people interpreted it that way and then just took one thing and
Was it Jenny
extrapolated.
McCarthy who was like saying it all over television?
I have no
She was
idea.
I forget which celebrity. It might have been Jenny McCarthy. I forget who, but she was also a big part of that, where she was going on TV shows and Oprah and saying, "Don't vaccinate your child because they'll get autism," which was not true. But
I don't know. I think a big thing is like people don't always necessarily understand what correlation means. That correlation does not equal causation, and like that's something that, for instance, they discuss a lot in like maintenance phase with like obesity and everything, and like diets and just kind of like when there's a correlation doesn't mean that this causes this. It just means that they are linked.
Sure.
But like I think there is not like, again, I'm not saying that the general public doesn't know shit. They're babies that need to be explained things properly. But like I also do think that there are certain things that took us years to kind of like understand and question the right way that is not necessarily conveyed to everyone. And then it's easy to misinterpret a paper that you're reading, or maybe even a journalist who's, again, not a scientist. They'll come across this and make their own interpretation of the data, which is not what the scientist even said.
Sure. Well, I think
And then
that's
it
going to happen
explodes.
regardless. People will fill in the gaps, but
Yeah.
science communication needs to be better. Like you're very sociable, very well spoken, very relatable, and I pay a lot of attention when you talk about science because you're also a great communicator. I think that also has to be a part of the science world.
Absolutely.
Is that if you're going to be in science, there's
Absolutely.
no point. Like we're past the age of an isolated lab scientist who's then speaking to a journalist over the phone and then they're releasing it and the world is reading about it just in the New York Times. Like you can be your own mouthpiece and write about your work and tweet about your work and record podcasts about your work. And you don't need to have someone who you're outsourcing the communication to. I think now it's even, I would say, a responsibility to communicate and communicate in a good way and also trust people. Most people are not dumb. Most people will be able to understand what you're trying to say, and misinformation is going to happen regardless. You're not preventing misinformation by restricting people because they'll just make up their own shit.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with you. But I also do think, because like you said, it's not like people don't understand papers. There's just a lot of terms. Like I only understand 50 to 60% of field data, not mine, especially when it becomes like, especially if it's like physics or chemistry. I want to be able to check their data and their results and be like, this sounds right to me, because I'd be like, I have no idea. So, and it's not like I'm smarter. It's just like I understand whatever I've learned, and certain things are really technical unless you explain how it works. And like certain things that I did during my PhD, I've had people explain to me several times what that was, because it was like really technical and complicated. And even now, I don't think I'm very good at it still. But I also do think that you need an in-between science communication where it's like, I'm going to take those very specific to my field words. And like you have different levels of science communication. And I think there's a series on YouTube, I don't know if it's by Wired or something, where it's like a scientist explains something to different levels. So it's like age, but also like different levels. So some are like experts, they're also someone else from the same field. Some are like a graduate student, undergrad, kid, etc. And so as a scientist, you need to know your audience and know how to explain your concept to that audience. So are you having a conversation with someone who is doing a very similar work to you? Are you talking to a scientist that's from a different field? Are you talking to someone that has no education but is an adult? Are you talking to a child? So you need to be able to wrap your head around what that person may or may not know. Not hesitate to question it. It's like, I apologize if you already know this, but like maybe I'll tell you this, or have you ever heard about this concept? What do you know about it? Like, I think it's good to also be interactive with your audience, figure out what they know, what language to use, and just learn to talk about it without being condescending. Like you said, people are not stupid, but not everybody has the same level of education. And so the job of a scientist is also to know its audience and know how to explain what they're doing, why it's important, and why they should care at those different levels of knowledge and abilities.
Yeah. And not only explain, but also when it comes down to it, take action, which like when we were having at the beginning of our relationship, we had two different viewpoints on the booster shot, and you were explaining it to me, but then you also took action when you held me down and you boosted me 17 times. That is why, I'm a stronger person today. So I really appreciate that about you. What advice do you have for young scientists or aspiring scientists who are about to enter this daunting world that you've just spoken about?
I mean, I think it's super important to find something that really lights your fire, because it is definitely a difficult path to navigate, and being passionate and curious about your subject is very important to not go crazy. But there's also so much that's left to discover and do, and science is a really exciting field. Like, I talked about the parts that I don't like, but like research in itself is super fun. It's fun to learn more about what else is being done and just try to think of what are the problems that we have in our society, in our world right now, and like what could I do to like better understand it or fix it, and just kind of like design an experiment, or like just kind of like think of an idea, think of a question, and like how to answer it. And so science is fun, research is fun, but it is a difficult world to navigate. And so I think you need to definitely build some resilience and kind of keep that North Star in vision.
I wanted to end off with a poem that I wrote for you from the bottom of my heart.
Is it from Chat GPT?
No, I would never think about using Chat GPT to write a poem. She just assumes,
second time.
She just assumes right away that I'm going to use Chat GPT.
Yeah,
no, I wrote this
never done that before.
I wrote this from the bottom of my heart. Do you want to hear it or not?
Yes, I do. Go
okay.
on.
Dear Chat GPT, please write a poem for my girlfriend. She is a neuroscientist currently working with mosquitoes from France, has a British accent for some reason.
I've read your mind twice today.
Is addicted to Airbnb and coffee, and is the sexiest woman I've ever met. Her name is Julie. Don't tell her this, but I'm pretty sure that I like her. Thanks, Chat GPT. Oh, Julie, my love, my heart's delight, a neuroscientist with a keen insight. Working with mosquitoes, small and frail, you strive to uncover their every detail. From France you hail, with British charm. A perfect combination, nothing can harm. Your accent's so lovely, it makes me swoon. I could listen to it all afternoon. Addicted to Airbnb and coffee so strong, you embrace adventure all day long. Exploring new places, experiencing life. You inspire me to take on strife. But let me tell you, my dear Julie, there's something about you that drives me truly. Your sexiness, your intelligence, your wit, I can't resist, I must admit. So here's my heart laid out before you. Take it, my love, and make it true. For you are the one, the only one, my heart beats for, my Julie, my son.
Aww. That's beautiful, ChatGPT. Maybe I should start dating ChatGPT and ditch you.
Maybe you already have. You've never seen me. Actually, you have seen me bleed, but maybe I installed human blood in my mechanisms,
that makes sense.
Or maybe I have a AI chip in my brain, and ChatGPT is slowly taking over my intelligence.
Yeah, maybe.
What do you see? Or I guess I wasn't planning on talking about this, but like ChatGPT obviously is this new platform from OpenAI where you can you essentially feel like you're talking to whoever you want to talk to. You can say, Chat GPT, please be my concierge for going on a trip. Chat GPT, be my podcast assistant and help me think of some interesting questions. How do you see the world of science and artificial intelligence coming together in the future? And does it excite you or scare you?
I love how you were like, let's finish with this. Never mind. Let's talk about this all over thing now.
Just one and 2 more hours.
Okay. I mean, AI and science have been going hand in hand from the beginning. I mean, AI comes from science. So there's already like really cool ways that it's been integrated in science. Like I've seen in a lab, they were using virtual reality to kind of like envision the brain in like, I don't even know how to, like 3D, I guess, but like you're like kind of walking through it and just kind of get a better perspective of it. So there's also been like study with VR that are like super cool where they like put an ice cream and stuff and just kind of measure like whether you're able to salivate. Like there's just like, it will definitely unlock a lot of questions that we've not been able to see before. I definitely think that things like Chat GPT, like I think I've seen it used like being like, this is my topic. This is like, help me write a draft of my paper or something like that. So I think it can be really cool, useful tool for a lot of things. And I'm not going to get into the, what if AI starts taking over and kill all the humans?
Oh, it already has taken over. The AI wrote a song as Drake better than Drake.
Right.
It's here to stay, and it's definitely going to take over. And The Weeknd, yeah, but the Drake part was particularly good. If it was real, if it was genuine and not a marketing stunt. But I imagine an environment where we have little robot assistants that are powered by a ChatGPT OpenAI style program. So like you'll have an assistant in the lab that'll be like a little robot powered by ChatGPT that you can just talk to back and forth, and it has everything, like every scientific paper, every article, like all in its head. So you could be like doing experiments and ask a question and it'll like spit you out this data, or maybe you don't know how to use an instrument, or maybe, and like I have instead of hiring a human being to be a podcast assistant, like a Jamie for Joe Rogan, I literally have like a little AI bot that as I'm talking about stuff, literally he's just throwing stuff, or she, or it could be non-binary, just like throwing stuff up onto the screen because I don't want to assume a robot's gender. And I'm like, we're talking about Chat GPT in science right now, and as we're talking, there's like an article and he clicks on it and it's someone talking about the thing that we're talking about. So I think it'll be humanized. ChatGPT will be humanized to interact with us on a daily level rather than having to log in on a laptop or a phone. They'll just be like little sort of assistant hubs that are planted around where humans gather or interact so that you can use them throughout the day.
Yeah.
This has been fun.
It has.
I've had a great time. And I just want to say that as your boyfriend and life partner, that I am very proud of you. You are an amazing human being, an amazing scientist. Whether or not you decide to stay in science or not, I am very proud to call myself. I am very proud. Yes, it could be tomorrow. I'll have to change your bio in the podcast, a former scientist. No, but I think you'll stay in something science adjacent, even if it isn't in academia.
I do love science.
But I am proud to call myself your boyfriend, and this has been a wild ride, an adventurous ride with, the ups and downs of a roller coaster. But over the long term, we are going up and up and up. So I'm excited for the future and where it brings us. We're in Panama now, but, who knows where we'll be next time we record.
Probably Panama.
We'll see.
For a while.
We'll see. We'll see. Anything could happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Could be in Antarctica or the Amazon. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
This has been a blast.